Crazy Taxi had 2 maps, a challenge mode, and 7 songs. 1 million people happily paid full price for it. Even more bought Counter-Strike on the Xbox. And Call of Duty 2 was heralded as a next-generation title, with no loadouts, unlocks, or XP, capped at a maximum of 8 players. Man, things have changed. Today, content is the conversation. Too much, too little. Returning, absent, updated, neglected. But one thing's for certain. Players expect more in their games than Crazy Taxi, especially after retail prices increased and the economy collapsed.
We didn't build just one game. We built 2.
In this market, games were praised not for being unique, but complete. The implication you were getting not just one game's worth of content out of your single purchase, and it quickly became a race. We've got a full campaign multiplayer and horde mode. We've got a full campaign multiplayer horde mode and co-op mission. We've got all of that and Forge mode. Don't need Forge when we're printing money. We've got these things too. So, it's in this world where Far Cry 3 came along with an open world single player campaign, competitive multiplayer with 75 levels of unlocks, a complete map making tool, and the subject of today's video. An exclusive co-op campaign. Not that you'd remember it. It's hardly scientific, but Far Cry 3 is a game with multiple videos hitting the tens of millions of views to match its tens of millions of copies sold. Meanwhile, the most popular Far Cry 3 video with co-op in the title was a couple of Russians 9 years ago. So I've already messed up. Now, there's a couple things to clarify before we continue. Number 1, no. You really can't play this anymore. And number 2, forgive the usernames. We were high schoolers.
Fucking hardscope!
Now, that clip was from Far Cry 3's E3 2012 presentation, and while it's marketing lingo, it's easy to see in context why it was something to be marketed. Gears of War 2's online co-op was campaign in horde mode. Halo's was campaign and horde mode, and Modern Warfare's was Spec Ops and horde mode. But these additions were fantastic, enough to be enjoyed to this very day. But it's fair to say they were efficient, reusing assets from the campaign in multiplayer. That is not what Far Cry 3 was selling. They pitched an entire studio building from the ground up a bespoke 6-hour campaign with its own cast of characters, following a unique storyline with their own animated and fully voiced cutscenes, all on top of everything previously mentioned. It was Ubisoft's attempt to thwart the competition purely through volume, which, considering Far Cry 3's Classic Edition didn't include anything beyond its campaign without controversy, the attempt wasn't successful. So, all I'm going to ask is, did it fail for a good reason? I mean, if I could love Mass Effect 3's multiplayer, a mode with a quarter of the ambition of Ubisoft proposed, surely there's something to get out of this. Right?
Wait, you're firing it backwards! Wait!
Before the campaign begins, there's an opening cinematic introducing our 4 characters working on a cruise ship that's suddenly attacked by Rook Island's pirates the captain sold out to in order to run off with all of the boat's cash. These 4 characters want that cash and set after their betrayer. Basically,
that piece of shit has no case.
Now, as you can't play this game anymore, I'm going to do what I normally don't and detail each moment of this game level by level, starting with an in-engine cutscene that's really a formality. It only explains everything that was just set up, presumably for those that didn't watch the cutscene before picking a loadout. This co-op campaign was developed by Ubisoft Massive, who was put in charge of Far Cry 3's entire multiplayer suite, and took notes from Ubisoft's own Rainbow Six Vegas, making the player's progression and loadouts connected to both co-op and competitive play, and it is very welcome. I actually played a decent amount of this game's PvP back at launch, and yet after just one playthrough of the co-op campaign, I surpassed level 50. By no means is this an ineffective manner of unlocking the game's various weapons, attachments, and unintentional waterboarding. It's efficient gameplay, and it's even more efficient game development. But already there's a problem. I'm getting mixed messaging about what this campaign's supposed to be, and I haven't even started yet. To reiterate, this campaign's entirely separate from Far Cry 3 itself, taking place 6 months before that game's events. While it does involve both the pirates and the privateers, there's absolutely no mention of Voss, Hoyt, Citra, or anybody else. And there's certainly none of the game's thematic undertones or symbolism. So this campaign's about story taking a backseat from making your own fun with friends. But it's also a plot of isolated mercenaries hell-bent on revenge, while using dozens of fully customized Call of Duty loadouts. And things only get weirder. There's a reason Payday doesn't have in-game cinematics. There's a reason Left 4 Dead doesn't have loadouts. And Rainbow Six Vegas had loadouts because your special force is funded by the US government, not stranded mercs on an island of pirates. I'm not saying you can't have these things in a co-op game, only that Far Cry 3 is already mixing together different types of co-op games. It goes out of its way to interrupt gameplay for a story that gameplay doesn't fit. It's about as cohesive as an Ernest Cline poem.
In my kind of porno movie, the girls wouldn't even have to get naked. They'd just take the guys down to the rec room and beat them repeatedly at chess.
Speaking of Payday and Left 4 Dead, that's what kind of co-op this is. Linear 4-player missions completing a series of objectives dealing with waves and waves of enemies combined with special units, including heavy armored machine gunners, snipers, knifers, dogs, and Molotov throwers. Or chargers, depending on the situation. Already, there's another problem. Smokers, jockeys, and chargers displace survivors. Shields, bulldozers, and tasers drain resources. But beyond just their roles, these enemies are distinct in everything in appearance, animation, and audio, both to inform players from a gameplay standpoint, and, for presentation, it's what gives these enemies life. The Cloaker's stupid backflip is part of his appeal. You don't want to be owned by some show-off like that. You can't let that happen, and you're going to laugh at your friend whenever they do. And anybody, I mean anybody, knows this sound. But because Far Cry 3's co-op is building off Far Cry 3, it doesn't have any of this. In design, the Cloakers in Payday and Knifers in Far Cry are the same. Chargers who will one-hit the player if they come into contact. But because the Knifer looks like any other pirate with the same voice actor and outfit, worst case scenario, you don't notice him during gameplay over your friends talking about Ernest Cline poems. Best case scenario, you pick him off like any other enemy with no unique personality. I think it's generally undervalued just how many details go into bespoke co-op games to make their gameplay compelling for hours and hours, from car alarms to altering enemy and item placement every playthrough, and collecting valuable resources via exploration that need to be timed effectively. Far Cry 3 co-op wasn't built for any of this, so it doesn't have it. All of its assets, enemies, mechanics, and tools were built for an open-ended sandbox that doesn't exist in a linear co-op shooting gallery. Stealth is just a technicality. Not only is there no XP boost like the main game for using it, the mission design forces players to go loud at specific junctions anyway. There's no difference between clearing this opening arena quietly and using a machine gun. All stealth does is waste your time. So, without Far Cry's open world, player agency, and thematic storytelling, it means this campaign's enjoyment is entirely reliant on the missions you partake in. In Ready or Not, you're chasing after the captain immediately upon arrival. According to the objective, he's actually nowhere in sight. Hiking up the road leads you not to him, but a boatman named Sato, who needs you to defend his boat from pirates. In exchange, he'll transport everyone over the island for a cut of the cash you're after. So you defend and defend and defend until you stop defending to attack, leading to a competitive ATV bomb delivery game. Far Cry 3 co-op's attempt at variety, which isn't unwelcome in concept. I've always loved the idea of co-op modes incorporating some kind of competitive element. But an isolated Mario Party minigame with inferior physics isn't what comes to mind. So after that fun, you're following the captain's tire tracks, which are as unique as DNA apparently, and end up at a bridge, which needs to be destroyed by transporting 4 explosives that spawn one at a time. Never mind Mass Effect 3 made you transport this type of objective twice per game rather than 4, but on smaller maps without spawning the same enemies every single time you pick it up, which is how we got the backwards rocket. After blowing up the bridge, which disappointingly doesn't kill your friends that stand on it.
Oh, come on!
I'm
He's in a
so
fucking
upset.
X-ray. He's just. Wait.
You follow another marker to clear enemies. This long trek leads you to the game's epic conclusion, defending a generator. By the end of this first level, objectives from the opening are already repeated, with the only difference being you need to keep track of the occasional boat, which isn't a threat. And frankly, neither are the enemies.
Gotcha.
For the fatty, he might eat you.
Oh, he's over there? Alright.
Take cover! He's mine!
Yeah, guys, you can move him. You can move him.
that! Norman, get a bigger gun!
Stop staring at me!
What? What is my hand doing?
And that's it. That's Ready or Not. Sidetracked has you taking down soldiers in the forest. So that's Far Cry 3's exclusive co-op campaign that you can't play anymore. I just saved you an hour of your life. TLDR, that first mission is all of them. It's not a portion of everything you do in the game, it is everything. Watch this. The first mission starts with a cutscene saying they need to kill the captain,
Then we need to hunt the bastard down and tear his fucking throat out.
before running to a marker and defending a boat. The second mission starts with a cutscene saying they need to kill the captain,
By the time I'm done, you won't be able to tell his face from a squirrel in a wood chipper.
before running to a marker and defending a train. This section is broken up by a minigame where you also compete with friends. And that's followed up by delivering bombs one at a time to destroy a bridge with rocket and sniper enemies that keep respawning each time you pick one up. It is unreal. Though in fairness, the end of the mission is ambushing a convoy, which is kind of different. For 8 minutes! Outskirts in Halo 2 didn't go on for that long, and there's certainly no equivalent of hunters bursting through the door with a banger in the background. It just ends with...
High quality products.
Notice how there's no Ubisoft games in that. What is my screen right now? The sheer irony of this mode's arrogance in promoting an exclusive campaign is to make 6 hours of
Original.
content, it had to stretch existing content to the point where it's more repetitive than any of the modes it's competing against. 30 minutes into one match of Nazi zombies, and the game has been completely transformed in its weapons, strategies, and hordes. 4 hours into this game's campaign, you're moving more boxes! I already made a crack about playing the most padded game since Destiny 1's campaign in my last video, so I'm going to be much bolder now. This is worse. I'm dead serious. Destiny 1's campaign, for all of its many, many faults, didn't put me on the world's slowest boat with the game's slowest reload to mow down enemies in a competitive minigame where we can't even take damage. Oh, and guess what that minigame's followed up by? Defending a generator. and that one's followed up by carrying bombs, while teammates cover you to an objective. To play a genuinely new objective in this campaign, you need to launch mission 5 of 6. And what genius has this level saved up after 4 hours of playtime? An escort mission. At least you can use the truck to speedrun. Sometimes.
I think the game thinks he's hitting hard objects.
And you'd never guess what players are tasked with doing after the truck arrives. Yep. Scripting is an art form that gets absolutely no credit in game design. There's this weirdly prevalent belief with music that it's not supposed to be noticed, which... yeah, right. But everything said about music that's wrong is correct for scripting. It's not supposed to be noticed, and when players do notice it, that likely means the scripting is bad. And Far Cry 3's co-op campaign features some of the most obnoxious I've ever witnessed. Which is fascinating, because it accomplishes this without animations or objective triggers like in, say, Medal of Honor. The scripting is awful almost entirely via enemy placement. That backwards RPG happened multiple times, because after being killed, he'd respawn on a normal interval to a precise location every single time. And because this bridge objective in Ready or Not takes minutes to complete, you can't help but notice it. If I'm covering friends with a sniper rifle from long range, how am I supposed to ignore earning the same kill every couple of seconds? I'm only doing what I'm supposed to. Discovering this game's scripting isn't achieved by speedrunning, exploits, or coordination, but just playing the game.
Oh god! Oh god! They all spawned right behind me!
During the finale, this game spawning entire armies from 2 bunkers on a timer, while on the opposite end, spawning 2 snipers outside the map's boundaries to pick everybody off. The optimal strategy then is to have someone watching those same 2 snipers respawn over and over and over.
Ugh. I'm playing one-handed right now. I don't need to fucking use the movement keys.
So you're really enjoying this, huh, Ray?
I've played games that fail to cover their tracks, but I've never seen one put a spotlight on them. And because the campaign's more about decoding scripts than immersive firefights, harder difficulties don't add any enjoyment, only prolonging every battle that's already been padded to the point of parody. In my brief time venturing outside of normal difficulty, all I learned is there's no reason not to use light machine guns. You can equip a faster reload perk, recoil is minimal, and because this game festoons its levels with chargers and heavies, you're actively punished for using weapons with a smaller magazine size. The shotguns are positively ruined in this mode. Even on normal, the enemy AI resists damage in co-op more than actual players in competitive, where they were really fun to use. While I wouldn't go as far to call normal difficulty fun, at least you can experiment with different loadouts, adding some variety if only to save your sanity. Yet somehow the game still manages to incur obscene difficulty spikes because of the scripting. Also during the final mission, you've got to, say it with me, carry a box through this temple complex, with enemies that infinitely spawn, including shotgunners placed right next to the objective runner. You cannot revive a fallen ally in the distance. By the time you get to them, too many enemies have spawned for everyone to deal with, so your only option is to have 3 people ready to sacrifice themselves for whoever is carrying that bomb. This isn't just unfun. It's the opposite of Far Cry's fun. Far Cry stands out amongst its AAA counterparts precisely for not only being a corridor shooter. Consistently, the worst moments in the series is when it's that, and the best are its most over-the-top or open-ended sandboxes. The reason everybody copied Far Cry 3's Outpost is because they're absolute gold. The Ubibox formula, for all the hate it gets now after Ubisoft beat players to death with it, was compelling and addictive. A controllable roller coaster where climbing towers was the calm before whatever variety of storm you wanted. Quiet, loud, day, night, vehicle, infantry, guns, knives, explosives, explosive bows, explosive cars, explosive animals. Even if it wasn't Far Cry 3, at some point in some game, a player's likely gotten into the groove of going from base to conquer the whole map before they knew it, utilizing every element of a game's sandbox. Far Cry 3 wasn't the first to do it, it was merely one of the first that managed to make almost every player engage with these outposts. Everyone's got a story about letting out a tiger, chaining together stealth kills, or flying into a car. What story does this provide? Other than bugs. Which, stay tuned. Within a week of beating this exclusive campaign, I'd forgotten everything that happened in it. And why would I remember it? How is the human brain supposed to distinguish between every single version of Carry the Bomb or Defend the Base? At least the competitive minigames give you a different gun or vehicle, but even this is quite limited. Whether you're using a sniper rifle, grenade, or rockets, you're just standing and shooting. And whether it's an ATV or jet ski, the physics are complete dog ass. While Payday or Left 4 Dead are a reference point, don't be mistaken. These missions don't have any varying layouts, enemy placement, hidden items, or minigames. Every mission plays identically every time. So once you've shot explosive bows that don't sync properly, there's no point in doing it ever again. More than the lack of variety, however, is the lack of craftsmanship. It's not just the objectives are spanned throughout this game, it's the objectives themselves are put together with duct tape. I actually respect using your fences as train tracks for this objective. I've always said that reusing assets is great game design. What's not is spending 8 minutes waiting for an elevator, railroaded by boundaries, setting off 2 countdown timers, or listening to the same song on repeat in every other level. They really fucking like that song, Jesus Christ.
RPG ahead!
Now, remember the game's premise. Kill the captain and get the money. Here's the first time you ever meet the captain after that CG opening.
I just put C4 in that door. That dude's fucked.
This campaign's main villain, your arch nemesis, the only reason these 4 characters are on the island, disrupting and chasing this man in every single mission prior, is met when you kill him with the editing of a shitpost? Look, the captain doesn't need to be Voss. Or the Jackal. Not even what's-his-face that made you Wolverine. He just needs to be there. Fleeing from them, or taunting them, or making a radio call. Just anything. But no. One optional CG cutscene is the entire motivation to pursue this invisible man for 5 hours through markers and elevators, and markers and elevators, and markers and bombs, and markers and bombs, and markers and bunkers, and markers and bunkers, and markers and bridges, and markers and bridges. That's not the end, though, because there was DLC released for this campaign. PlayStation exclusive DLC. Sony and Ubisoft were really proud of this, where on every official page and news article, you could read paragraphs about how the High Tides DLC is exclusive to PlayStation this January 15th. Only on PlayStation, a free bonus for PlayStation. Continue the story on PlayStation. It came out on Steam January 31st. They never announced this, it just appeared in a free update. Who does that? Who advertises an exclusive DLC on the full game's release day, only to post it somewhere else 2 weeks later without telling anybody? And no, they never said it was console exclusive, just PlayStation exclusive. Though this was the era of gaming companies pretending the PC didn't exist. I mean, I'm not complaining, because it let us play 2 more missions. Or maybe I am. So after killing the captain and leaving with the money, our walking stereotypes are still on the island. I guess the boat seen floating off to the endless sea broke down and they needed a new one, which is conveniently located in a nearby village, but its villagers are asking for them to help fight the pirates. The name Redemption stems from the cop and former hitman saying they want to help these people rather than just fighting for themselves. through committing endless murder, which seems mighty hypocritical to feature in Far Cry 3, considering Jason Brody's entire story of descending into madness and manipulation via his own journey of helping people through ceaseless murder. But once again, we haven't even started. On the official release page, it claims that the High Tides DLC missions are, quote, the culmination of all the hard work we've put into the main co-op campaign. They're truly the best of the best, with tougher fights, bigger competitions, some great up-close time with your favorite characters, and explosive moments unlike anything you've seen before. You carry 3 bombs to a bridge. In fairness, it's slightly different this time. You do technically have the option of carrying all the bombs together rather than going one at a time for it to spawn. Only enemy spawns are attached to the bombs, so if you pick up all of them, 3-wave spawn all at once is a horde you can't possibly clear. Everything mentioned previously is here. The scripting, the spawns, the tedium, even the bad editing and cutscenes. Although this moment did give us one of the best examples of how this game was never built for co-op.
Watch them fall.
So
I'm so jealous, Casey. I wish I got to see that.
I wish I could see it too.
During the mission, I commented its flow seemed like a decent improvement as the group are at least moving forward from objective to objective. But I spoke too soon. The second half quickly rectifies that with back-to-back defense objectives where you're introduced to what the developers meant by tougher fights. 3 heavies at once. It's like BioWare took over. The sad part is I can't even get mad at it. What are the developers supposed to do? Massive wouldn't have the budget or resources to build all new enemies for the console exclusive DLC of a co-op exclusive campaign in someone else's game. You can't alter the AI's behavior, grant new weapons, or limit the player's loadouts. Or can you? Jailbreak begins with our characters having limited weapons, forcing everyone to scavenge for ammunition and firearms off of enemies in the prison caves they're escaping. It's kind of interesting. For about 2 minutes, when you then arrive at the lockers where all of your equipment is kept for the rest of this 30-minute level. The amazing thing is, this 2-minute introduction is the most memorable part of the entire co-op campaign, because it's the one moment you're legitimately doing something different. You're not defending generators, planting C4, escorting friends, running over friends, or centering your screen on health bars. I apologize for really banging on about context in the last batch of videos, but it keeps coming up because it is so often the folly of mediocre games like this. Far Cry 3 is remembered for so many reasons, and not all of them were its sandbox in this guy. But even the main missions that featured every problem found in the co-op campaign. Poor scripting, dumb enemies, tedious objectives, yet it overcame all of those because of context. You weren't just blowing up cars with a grenade launcher in an on-rails vehicle level, but hearing the terrified voice of Jason's girlfriend while he's laughing at committing mass murder and cracking one-liners. Even when Far Cry 3 was being just another linear corridor shooter, it wasn't. Meanwhile, when the co-op campaign is anything but another corridor shooter, it throws it away faster than you can process it even happened. What unforgettable moments were they talking about? Delivering missiles again? Defending a hill? Playing a minigame? It's all the same stuff. Although, there is one thing about this game that will undeniably stick with me forever. The aforementioned bugs. I've witnessed a lot of glitches in a lot of games in a lot of genres, and I'm the type of person who, while not at all advocating for the state of modern game releases, is normally entertained by things like this. I mean, I'm an Alpha Protocol fan. I have to be this way. And Far Cry 3 Co-op does feature a whole lot of the same entertainment value. But there's one moment during the final mission that I've never witnessed before. Throughout the game, there's been various moments where players are desynced in terms of location.
Right. Oh, what? Wait.
What the fuck?
I was confused by that as well. I saw that in the distance and I was confused.
That's not where I died.
What's in the sky on one screen is in the ground on the other. What's fascinating though is, unlike normal games where it keeps desynced players in their respective states until the match is over, players seemingly get resynced after specific actions like reviving, switching weapons, or operating a turret. So, right after everybody collects their guns in this final level, our friend JK is, running in place. The game has completely lost track of his movement, and from this point onward, the game thinks he's in the cave even though he's walking normally on his end, hasn't disconnected, and the game has marked the caves as out of bounds. Ignoring this, we all move to the next arena, where when someone dies and JK revives them, this happens.
What? She disappeared! I got teleported back to where it said he was!
What? What the fuck is going on?
Oh yeah, Casey's all the way back there and dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so Patty, I'm gonna kill myself. Go revive me. I want to capture this.
You got it.
Oh my god.
Okay, so my screen is in front of me.
It's just instantaneous,
Don't
right?
worry,
You're
I'm
just gonna suddenly be back there.
What the fuck? How? You know what's amazing too? Your fucking ghost, he goes into his revive animation and then goes back to walking into a wall. How?
Bro, what?
Well, Patty, it's you. Can you kill these guys too, Patty? Or can you kill them, or do
No,
you
I'm a
do
part
it?
of them. Die. Die.
Oh, well, thanks.
Oh, I just shot him. Team
you
kill.
You just got a long-range kill medal for that. because the game thinks you're in the cave.
You're right.
It does!
Oh my fucking god.
Wait, we gotta get more experimental. Hold on.
Okay, they
Oh
fixed
shit!
it.
No, they know I'm here now. I
That
broke the
fixed it.
glitch.
That fixed it. You're there
Aw.
now.
So that's Far Cry 3's exclusive co-op campaign that you can't play anymore. You're really not missing out. It is occasionally beautiful, as it's based upon Far Cry 3, which holds up rather brilliantly after 10 years, Xbox Live audio quality aside.
Let's see what you got, pussy!
Beyond that, this campaign is horrifically paced, poorly scripted, unbalanced, and painfully repetitive. How this thing was expected to be replayed for daily challenges, I cannot comprehend. They make even less sense here than Wolfenstein Youngblood. To make sure it wasn't just nostalgia, I also hosted competitive multiplayer before the servers were closed. And it was much better.
Okay, that works, I guess.
By no means was it superior to Call of Duty or Halo, but it was competent. With a unique emphasis on team play, satisfying weapons, built-in playlists for custom maps, and some really flexible loadouts that could make equally powerful and goofy combos. There's 3 things I really liked about this multiplayer component. Firstly, it's kill cam. Rather than horrifically emulating Call of Duty's, Ubisoft Massive came up with this, which shows you the precise angle and trajectory of who killed you and how. It not only avoids the broken kill cams, it's honestly faster and more optimized, as you're not waiting 4 to 5 seconds to get to the information you really needed to see. It's a good system, and think more games could have copied it. Same goes for decoding. While Far Cry 3 did have a progression system with XP, leveling, and unlocks, it also had decoding, where you'd earn different forms of intel. All of these are XP boosters that varied in amount. You could decode up to 3 of these at a time, and each piece of intel would decode at a different rate. I normally hate timers in games, but what I appreciated about this system is it's just speeding up what was already going to happen. It's a layer on top of the normal progression, not the only form of progression. This made the game addicting, as you always had an extra reason to keep playing, and you get bonus variants of weapons with their own unique traits. And there's the auto-aim ziplines. I don't care if it's broken, it's hilarious, and more games need it. Though competitive is definitely stronger, that could have also been because there was a precedent set with Far Cry 2 in Instincts. Meanwhile, co-op was all new for the franchise, and the developer of both had only ever worked on RTS games before being acquired by Ubisoft. The studio wanted to branch out beyond that genre, but their inexperience in shooter campaigns at the time is evident. As for the reason Far Cry 4 opted to have two-player campaign co-op, it just makes sense. Far Cry is a sandbox, and adding another player into the open world amplifies it. Whether for better or worse, it's for more entertainment, which is why it's been in every game since Far Cry 4. Meanwhile, 4-player co-op was dropped immediately, and after the team's last hurrah in Far Cry 5's arcade, so too was competitive. But that's the thing. Far Cry 3 has set a precedent. There was an article on Massive's website where on August 30th there was a company-wide email to play Far Cry 3's multiplayer one last time during lunch. And being a Ubisoft-owned company, it's framed as a bout of nostalgia, with developers being pleasantly surprised by their old work, and seeing what lessons were learned in making this game that were later applied to their future titles. Here's my framing. You have to organize an internal session to play the game you made for your bosses, because those bosses are about to make it unplayable forever. That is We'll have to repeat all of this too. We already have. It'll happen to Far Cry 4, 5, even 6. What's to stop it? They will become 10 years old one day. All their multiplayer, co-op play, and community content is locked behind servers that obviously don't accept pirated copies, and eventually Ubisoft will close those down to focus our sources on newer or more popular titles. And when that happens, the only Ubisoft Far Cry multiplayer that'll be playable on PC is 2, because of its LAN support, which can be used via third-party software to play online forever. You can't access Far Cry 3's multiplayer, but you can play Quake 1. Ubisoft has no excuse. This isn't a YouTube video one person made 15 years ago and unlisted for copyright claims or embarrassment. This is a mode worked on by hundreds of people over years of their lives for a multi-million-dollar franchise funded by one of the world's largest gaming publishers. Is Far Cry 3's co-op good? No. But so what? Daikatana's on Steam. I've played it in co-op, and it's a lot worse than Far Cry 3's. Yet it can be played by anybody at any time, because my opinion of Daikatana nor anybody else's has anything to do with its right to exist. It was made to be played, and there's no reason it can't. What is this campaign doing that isn't being done by games you can play forever? It needs official servers like an Xbox needs Kinect. And if Ubisoft says otherwise, it's the same company that battled pirates by rewarding them and sold games with DRM software that blue screens your computer. They're as trustworthy as a check mark. And yet there are check marks out there who will still say, you bought the game, so you agreed to Ubisoft's terms of shutting the game down. Because Far Cry 3 selling 0 copies would have forced Ubisoft to add LAN support to Far Cry 4. Please share those drugs with the rest of us. This game isn't taboo, it's not technically demanding, and it isn't locked to a particular era of hardware. It was sold to millions of people with the purpose of being bought, and it was made by a team of people with the purpose of being played, and now it can't. At least, not how it was intended. The idea of these corporate overlords employing all of this only to burn it all whenever it's no longer useful. It's not surprising, it's just insulting to every single working artist in the industry today. And do not believe for 1 second that it's necessary. What worries you the most about the future of video game preservation? Ubisoft. Since everybody knows your favorite anime is Black Lagoon, what is your second favorite? That's tough. I really do love Ghost in the Shell SAC, but there's multiple shows vying for attention over it, like Great Pretender, Planetes, Kakaguri, and the big 3 adaptations on Netflix. I'd still say Ghost in the Shell SAC, specifically Second Gig, for now. Why haven't you played Valkyria Chronicles 1 and 4 yet? For the same reason I haven't played the 1400 other games in my Steam file. Though via my friends out of context account for the games, I'm definitely interested in playing them. What kind of aliens do you think would be the worst ones to encounter? Xenos? Necros? The French. How many kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes, or terabytes does your Tally fan art folder consume on your hard drive? A lot less than you'd think. And it's all pretty dumb. Know how all the questions? I've done this once or twice. Live action Tim Curry Red Alert or 1.0 Andromeda conversations. Definitely Tim Curry, but what we really needed was him to feature in Andromeda.
Does this make you happy, Ray? Does this make you happy, Ray?
Thanks. I hate it. What time do you wake up averagely? It used to be 9 to 10 a.m., but with these SNRIs I'm currently taking, I can't seem to even get up at noon. At this rate, I might just chuck them into the ocean and give some dolphin a trip. Do you have a flat ass? It's not an ironing board, but it ain't a bubble either. How much fuck would a woodchuck chuck if a fuckchuck could fuck wood? Lots. Can you make this your morning alarm?
Get the fuck out of bed, bitch, go!
Done.
Get up, and then they got go. Gotta wake up.